Good morning, Trump's family. Welcome back to my channel. Have a good day, everyone, and God bless you. Alright, without further ado, let's get into the news this Thursday morning. And what we have here is the FBI spokesperson appearing on MSNBC and completely melting down on Hinge, trying to gaslight Americans into what took place last couple days, where the FBI raided the Trump presidency at Mar-a-Lago. And then coming out and whining about the use of the word raid, that trying to seize on all the Republicans who have called a raid, and that's what has been known for decades. When the FBI descends upon a home with a search warrant, they are raiding you, they are coming to look for something, they aren't at a raid, and that's what they're doing. And this FBI agent here is all just beside themselves over on MSNBC. He wants to make sure the public knows it wasn't a raid, it was not a raid, that they're already calling for us to get defunded. This guy's whining. This is what Fed boys do when they know that there might be some type of action coming their way as far as being defunded, and more importantly, dismantled. That's what needs to take place with these three-letter agencies. If you have a Republican congressman or senator who's only talking about the funding, they need to be speaking about dismantling and impeaching the regime. Those are the requirements moving forward from here on out. It is time to hold these individuals accountable. There are no longer any good apples at the FBI. I don't care what Sean Hannity or any of these other people have sailed. They're still good people. Now, if there were good people, they'd be standing up against what is currently taking place and speaking out, and they are not. So they're complicit. So let's get to take a look. Coming to us from MSNBC over here, FBI spokesperson whining about the use of the word raid. Everyone listen to this. Agents, by the way, don't like the word raid, they don't like it. It sounds like it's some kind of, extra due to judicial non-legal thing. It's the execution of a search warrant. It's a court-authorized search warrant. I'm sure we're now going to be in for days of ranting and raving, even at CPAC. Over the weekend, there was a congressman from Arizona who called for the defunding of the FBI before this even happened. So we're in for more of that. I'm sure they're hunkering down for that. But the word raid, they don't like it. They want to say they executed a search warrant, all of that going on, meticulous searching. Even I've seen situations where. See what they just did. MSNBC changed it in real time. It went from being a raid after he was complaining about the word use of raid, they changed it to FBI execute search warrant at Trump's Mar-a-Lago. These people are absolutely dishonest. They sit here and they have these FBI agents, they have the CIA agents within these organizations who sit there and push out the narrative, and they want to make sure that they're gaslighting Americans as best as possible. So it's not a race. Of course, inflation is not an inflation, recession is not recession, a woman's not a woman, all these terms that the left continues to try to redefine these communists, who are within these networks, within the deep state, within the entrenched bureaucracy of the United States. These people are absolutely the danger to our country. And they don't get how ridiculous they sound when they finally admit the truth after months and years of denying basic reality, or calling Republicans fascists or racist for saying the same thing for God knows how long. It seems as though these leftists have no sense of self-awareness at all. The Kamala Harris video that I made yesterday, or Kamala Harris thought it was just a genius idea for her to chime in on the Brittany Griner situation. She's clearly the last person to be speaking on that particular issue. But of course, zero self-awareness during the early days of the pandemic. Nancy Pelosi showing off her chocolate ice cream on a late show in her $25,000 fridge in her lavish mansion, where people are literally starving and getting fired from their jobs. No self-awareness. And now we have Ilhan Omar, after promoting and enabling the exact policies that have led to absolute chaos in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Well, now all of a sudden Ilhan Omar is pointing out the unacceptable levels of homelessness and crime in the city that she and her Democrat allies and Democrat comrades is the only way to describe them, claiming that the current state that Minneapolis is in is unacceptable and wouldn't be accepted anywhere else. Even though that exact environment is literally accepted in every single major Democrat metropolitan area. These people have zero self-awareness. It'll happen. It's you and your Democrat friends, you guys, the total delusion, hypocrisy, disconnect from reality and lack of self-awareness continues to hit epidemic levels on the Democrat side, and we just got to talk about it. So let's roll the tape. Alright, so this is the kind of stuff that you just wouldn't expect to hear coming out of the Democrats' mouth. Now, what's the common denominator across the board when it comes to leadership in the city of Minneapolis? Of course, the obvious fact is they're all Democrats. And she claims that in no other city would this be tolerated. But Minneapolis isn't even at the top of the list when it comes to these kinds of problems. I mean, just talking about homeless encampments alone, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Philadelphia certainly have you beat. The problem actually is in these Democrats, cities that you have tolerated, and you have accepted this, and conservatives, and frankly, not even conservatives, just regular citizens have been calling you guys out on these issues for a really long time, and you've done nothing but exacerbate the problem. It's a real rich coming from Ilhan Omar, real rich coming from literally anybody who's a member of the Progressive Caucus. These are the last people that should be talking about high crime levels and businesses shutting down because communities have become unsafe, drug-infested, crime-infested. Let's use the proper word here without getting in trouble. Cesspools. Ilhan Omar creates the problem and then complains about it. Ilhan Omar, who's on the record claiming in the Minneapolis Police Department should be abolished, not reformed, not defunded, abolished, and here she is 2 years later complaining about a city that's out of control. You don't get the right to be that much of a hypocrite. I mean, by law, by definition, of course, in terms of what's actually legal. Certainly you could be the biggest hypocrite that you want, the biggest dummy that you want. But culturally speaking, you don't get to be that much of a hypocrite. It's almost like this is what the Democrats wanted in the first place: cause chaos and then run and get elected on said chaos caused crime and poverty and homelessness, and then run on an agenda that claims that big government and government is going to solve all those problems. They created the problem in the first place, and now you think they're going to solve it. Democrats would be nothing without the problems they create. And we're seeing and it's really the same situation. All these Democrats all of a sudden are outraged about illegal immigration crossing into their territory. Finally, it's in their backyard, and New York Mayor Eric Adams has had enough. Eric Adams, New York City to crime-ridden for illegal immigrants. According to the New York Post, Adams said, "We were led to believe about 40 people should have been on that bus. Only 14 got off," and suggested that the migrants got off the bus earlier than their final destination because of the fear that something was going to happen to them if they came to this location. "And we're concerned about that, because we don't want people being dropped off just anywhere." Well, again, you don't get to be that much of a hypocrite. These are the same Democrats advocating for sanctuary cities, the same Democrats advocating for open border policies where that's exactly what's happening. Illegal, unvetted migrants from God who knows where, who could be foreign agents, who could be criminals, who could be terrorists, are being allowed into the country to just slip and sneak and go where they please. That's the entire point. And now all of a sudden, now that it's finally affecting them, Democrats are voicing their concern. You don't get to voice your concern. Oh, by the way, Fox News went on the streets of New York and interviewed some people about the southern border crisis and illegal migrants now being bused from Texas to New York City. And some of the responses were just incredible. It wouldn't be happening with a different president, of course, a different administration. And it shouldn't be happening at all, but it should go back. They should put them all at the White House, out front of White House. The border is a federal responsibility. To think otherwise is foolish. Who is responsible for it? One person and one administration, Joe Biden. They're Joe Biden's grip up his ass and do something about it? I'm just gonna say and repeat the same thing. You don't get to be outraged. You don't get to virtue signal on this issue. What's next? Democrats all of a sudden are gonna start caring about the fentanyl crisis. What's next? Democrats are going to all of a sudden start talking about black on black inner city crime, the true greatest danger to young black life. First of all, I'll say that I do believe in many ways we are a nation in mourning as a result of gun violence. Black people are 13% of America's population. And I think it's 62% of homicide victims to gun violence. Well, what am I going to say? I'm going to say what I've been saying: you shouldn't be allowed to be this much of a hypocrite. It's unbelievable. The cities under Democrat leadership are deteriorating at an astonishing rate. I mean, it's sped up a little bit now. But really, it's been a slow roll over the past couple of decades, and Democrats, after defending their track records, defending their job performance, and standing by things like no cash bail, or San Francisco's pro-theft laws. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Now they're gonna signal moral outrage over crime, homelessness, dirty streets, and businesses unable to run in these environments. Give me a break from these Democrat politicians, please vote them out. I mean, it's never gonna happen. Wishful thinking. It's a fantasy of mine. But honestly, it's really the only solution. This is what happens when you refuse as a political party or political ideology to emphasize the importance of personal responsibility and just being good law-abiding citizens and human beings. This is what happens when you enable and empower a degenerate culture that continues to go downhill. This is what happens when you ignore reality and you live in some sort of fantasyland that everyone can be reformed or that problems just magically go away. If you throw taxpayer dollars at them, or problems just magically go away. If you do nothing about them, laws must be enforced. It's the only antidote to chaos, and that is the human baseline nature, chaos. And without enforcement of basic laws and basic societal standards, society plunges into chaos. And that's exactly what we're seeing, and it's your fault. And you don't get to complain about it. Now, after calling Republicans terrible evil bigots and fascists for voicing their concerns over the last 20 years, the lack of self-awareness is just astonishing. These Democrats are truly incredible in all the wrong ways, and really all I got to say here, I guess in conclusion, well, I don't really got to say anything. I just got to show you guys one thing. This headline right over here really puts it all into perspective. Poll Florida more desirable to live in than a blue New York in California. There's a reason why Florida's net migration is in the multiple hundreds of 1,000s. There's a reason why people are fleeing these Democrat cesspools for the greener pastures of red states. Those red states may not be perfect and they still have left-wing metropolitan areas, but at the end of the day, at least they have Ron DeSantis trying to do something about it, like his most recent action of firing that Soros DA in the Tampa area. At least the baseline culture and society and politics in the state of Florida hasn't gone completely insane. The same can't be said for all these Democrat stronghold states, and that at this point is an obvious statement. Thank you for always watching and subscribing to the channel. Every channel subscribe is my motivation.